Okay, so I am here to talk about the Netflix movie Fatal Affair, which came out July 16th. I was there for it. Me and my hubby, we watched it, but I didn't get a chance to do a review. So here I go with my review. Now, let me put a disclaimer out there. When I do reviews, I spoil the whole entire movie from beginning, middle, and end. So if you do not like spoiler alerts, please click off of this video. Also, this is not the actual movie, so don't come here expecting for this to be the actual movie. Is on Netflix. You have to go there to see it. This is only a review, and that is it, guys. Okay. So the cast, we have two familiar people, and then there's another guy. I've seen him in a few other movies, but I'm not really familiar with him, but I do know his face. But we have Nia Long and we have Omar Epps, and then the other main character is Stephen Bishop. Now, this is my first time, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the first time I'm seeing Nia and Omar in a movie together. Maybe it's another movie, it's slipping my mind, but this is the first time that I've seen these two together in a movie, so I was super excited about that. So let me just jump into the movie and how this starts off. This is so crazy. Now the character's name, Nia's character name is Ellie, and Omar character name is David, and Nia Long's husband character name is Marcus. And then you have Nia's friend, who is Courtney, and then Nia and her husband Ellie and Marcus, they have a child, and their child name, I believe her name is Brittany, if I'm not mistaken. And then also another character in this movie that ties everything together is this woman named Deborah, okay, which is David's ex-wife. All right. So the movie starts out real juicy. So you have Deborah. I thought at first it was Ellie, but because the girl kind of looks like Ellie, but it starts out with this woman and this dude. They're just kissing. They're by the window and they're just being very sensual and sexual, just making out or whatever, and just making love. They go to the couch all through the house, making love or whatever. And I guess after their little escapade, she gets a little thirsty. So she goes and pour herself a glass of water. Old dude decides to go into the bathroom to pour himself, I don't know, get in the shower or the bath or whatever. So she's drinking her little water, and after some time, she goes to look for him, and she was like, baby, she's looking through the house and she can't really find him. And so she's looking through the rooms or whatnot, and then she hears the water running. She was like, oh, okay, he in there. He in the bathtub. He wants some more or whatever. So she goes walking to the bathroom, and because she hears the tub running. And as she's going in there and she's getting closer and closer, she sees the dude in the bathtub and it's blood in there. So, of course, she starts screaming. And then when she starts screaming and she backs up, somebody grabs her from behind. And then that's how the movie starts off, like that. And so then it switched to Ellie, and she's on the phone. I guess she's on the phone with her colleagues or whatnot. And she's walking up to the house. I see something that says sold. So she just got a new house, her and her husband, and she's doing very well. Also, Ellie is a lawyer, and she actually just got her own law firm. So that's in the works, but she's still working at this other firm until the finishing touches get finished at her law firm. So she's on the phone. She goes in the house, and the house is absolutely gorgeous. Like, this house is to die for. It is so, I love the layout, everything about it, and it's got this beautiful big ocean in the back. Like, they are really doing good. They are very successful, Black, beautiful couple, and her husband's in there and taking out things out of the box and just trying to make the house a home. And so she goes in there. I'm like, okay, looks good. They got a nice life, living it up, living a good life. And so they're just talking or whatever, just getting settled in. And then it skips to her going to work. And she's talking to her colleague, well, Courtney, and they're just catching up. And she was like, well, how are you getting settled in and everything like that? She was like, well, I'm getting settled in, but my husband, that's not so good. And she was like, uh-oh, sounds like you need a drink or whatever. And she said, I really do. So she was like, well, Courtney was like to Ellie, let's go out for drinks or whatever. And she was like, not tonight, but we gonna do it another night. She was like, okay, cool. So anyways, she goes to her office, and when she goes into her office, immediately, her boss is sitting there or whatever. She goes in and she sees David. And the boss was about to introduce them, but as soon as she sees David, she was like, oh my gosh, hi, David. And so the boss was like, oh, so you two know each other. She was like, actually, yes, a small world. We actually used to be like schoolmates. We used to go to school together. And I think they kind of like kind of sort of dated or whatever, but that was 20 years ago. So she was like, yeah, oh my gosh. And so he's looking at her or whatever. And she was like, it's just a small world. It's so good to see you. And he was just telling her how good she looked or whatever. And she was like, thank you. So they're sitting down. And I think they brought him on the job because they wanted him to, because he's a hacker. He's able to get into accounts and different things like that. Just any type of, he's able to hack whatever is security you need to get through. He's the man to call upon because he knows how to unlock stuff. So he is a hacker. They brought him on or whatever. And so they're just there. I guess he's talking to them about, his investigation and how he'll be able to get in with no problem or whatever have you. So the meeting is over and they're walking out, and David just keep on saying to Ellie how beautiful she looks, and she is beautiful, but she doesn't necessarily feel that way because her and her husband, I mean, it's just been a while. Now her husband was in a accident. I think he got hit by a truck driver that he didn't see. So he injured his shoulder and everything like that really bad. So they haven't been intimate for about like maybe 6 months because of his injury. He's on meds and different things like that. He's trying to recover and get back to health. So they haven't really been intimate. So for her to hear this compliment from David, she was like, wow, he's complimenting me. And so she was like, thanks or whatever. And she was like, well, it's so good to see you. And he said, why don't we grab a drink or whatever? And she was like, no, I can't tonight. I got to get home to my husband or whatever. So he's just looking at her all crazy. And she walks off. So she goes home. And when she goes home, I notice how when she's sitting there with her husband and they're having dinner, it just looks like a routine. It looks very dull, very boring. There's no excitement, and she's not really lit up like she was lit up when David was, talking to her at the office. She was like a little girl, like a little schoolgirl again, And so I could just tell that it's a routine and they're just sitting there having their dinner and she's just no excitement. And then when she lays down in the bed, I'm sure she kind of wanted some intimacy with her husband, but they show all his meds. He's just out of it. And she's just laying there and she's starting to feel like, I don't even know who he is anymore. Like we don't have no fun, no excitement. And she's just kind of like, man, this is really boring. So she's starting to kind of question, what man did she really marry? So anyway, the next scene, they go back to work or whatever. And she sees David again, of course. And she gets a phone call from Courtney, and Courtney was like, you remember we're gonna go out tonight, right? And she was like, oh yeah, we're gonna go out. And so David asks her again. He was like, you want to go out for drinks? And she was like, actually, I promised my friends that I was gonna go out to have drinks with her. And he was like, oh, okay, well, maybe some other time. And then she said, but you know what? Maybe you should join us. And he was like, no, 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 I don't want to seem like I'm imposing, and I don't want to do that. And she was like, no, 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 it's fine, it's cool. Besides, she won't mind at all. She would enjoy some male company or whatnot. So he was like, okay, so that was right up his alley. And he was like, well, I get to have you all to myself. And I was like, when he said that, I was like, okay. I mean, he just said it in like a creepy type of way, but she didn't pick up on it. This girl's just happy to get any type of compliment. So anyway, she goes to the spot where they're supposed to meet at the bar or whatnot. And she gets a phone call, and it's Courtney. And Courtney's like, oh gosh, I have a lot of work to do. I can't really meet you or whatnot, but I hope you have fun. And she was like, oh man, but David's here. And she was like, I know, but just have fun or whatever. And so David shows up, and he was like, well, what's going on? She was like, oh, that was Courtney. She said she couldn't make it. And so he was like, I mean, I'm happy about that because I have you all to myself. And so anyways, they go over to sit down at the table, and they're just sitting there talking, trying to catch up and, just see where each other are at and how each other's been. And so, of course, he gets to asking her about her marriage or whatever. And she said, I have the perfect life, the perfect marriage, the perfect husband, except for after 20 years, it just feels like, who did I really marry? It's like waking up to someone that I don't even know. So that's right up his alley. Like, women need to stop running their mouth so much, but that's what we do. Well, whatever. So he's just sitting there looking like, yeah, okay, so she has marital problems, so I can go in for the kill. And so she was like, well, what about you? Well, what's going on with you? He said, well, I have an ex-wife. I'm divorced. And she was like, I think she asked him what happened, and he was like, she just didn't want to be with him anymore or something like that. Or he kind of like brushed it off and didn't really go into details about it. So anyways, he was like, he just kept telling her she's so beautiful. And she was like, wow, I'm starting to think that I'm not so much, because I mean, my husband, he doesn't really compliment her anymore. And so he was like, well, if I was your man or your husband, I'd make you feel beautiful every day. And so she gets to smiling. And then her phone goes off with a text message. And of course, it's her husband, Marcus. And he's, asking her how's things going with her and Courtney. And of course, she leaves out the detail that Courtney did not join her, that she's in fact sitting there with David. She didn't tell him that. She just said, it's going cool or whatever. And so David was like, who is that? Courtney? And she was like, no, it's Marcus. And he was like, So anyways, I think he asked her, you want to get a drink? Because they were already drinking, so they went to go get more drinks or whatever. And so she was like, well, you're really a bad influence on me, because they were drinking a lot. I think he purposely did that so she can be more relaxed and tell more of her business to him, so he can get a feel of where she's at as far as personally in her life. And so she's drinking and she's feeling a little loose or whatever. So she says, come with me. And so they go on the dance floor or whatever, and they're dancing. And then this chemistry and all of these just sensual vibes start exuding between the both of them. And of course, they almost share this passionate kiss. They're just dancing and just feeling the vibe and feeling the moment. And it's been a long time for her. So, any type of feel and warmth from a man, especially a man that desires her, this is everything. This is like a piece of cake to her, because it's been a while. And so they almost kiss or whatever, and she stops and she said, excuse me, I gotta go to the bathroom. So she leaves the dance floor and she goes to the bathroom, and she tries to pull herself together like, girl, pull yourself together. You're married. You can't do this. She breathing hard because she wants this Negro. She's hot. She's horny. She's in the moment. She liking everything that he's doing. The way he's touching her and dancing with her and caressing her, and just in this whole vibe with her. So she was like, dang, pull yourself together. Like, she's looking in the mirror, talking to herself, just looking at herself like, come on, girl. So anyways, she tries to go out of the bathroom. So as soon as she opened the door, David is right there. And he had this look and his stance like, where you think you going? So he goes into the bathroom, and he just kissed her because he already knew what she really wanted. He could tell it, he could feel it, and he was just giving her everything that she was giving him as far as the vibe. And honey, he put her up on that sink, and he kissing her, and when he pulled them panties off, I was like, oh my gosh, it's a wrap. It's a wrap. Cause I mean, you kissing, he pulled off them panties. I'm like, it's a wrap. That she's done. This is over. She's getting ready to mess up. And he pulls them panties down, and they're kissing, and she says, stop. I can't do this. I can't do this. Now, luckily, he didn't rape her. I was glad he didn't rape her. So I was like, ooh, because I thought he was going to take that. Like, once them panties off, I'm sliding in. Like, no. And so, luckily, he let her get up, and she storms out of the bathroom. Of course, he's chasing her, and he was like, I mean, it's okay. The secret's safe with me. I know you felt something. I felt something. I know you did too. It's been 20 years. I don't want to lose you again. She was like, just please stop. Like, what I said in there was a mistake. This kiss was a mistake. I shouldn't have done this. This is very inappropriate. I'm married. We can't do this. We cannot do this. And so she gets in her car and she goes home, and she's feeling bad. Like, what did I just do? Even though she didn't go all the way, like the way that they kissed and the things that he was rubbing on, and then he pulled off her panties. Like, that's very, very intimate. I'm glad she didn't go all the way, but that in itself is wrong. Like, that's too far to me. And so she's thinking about this, and she's feeling guilty. And as soon as she gets home, David texts her talking about, it was good seeing you tonight. And of course, she ignored it. And so the next morning, she wants to go for a run because she wanted to clear her head. Like, oh man, I almost got caught up. And this nigga, he keep texting her. This fool keep texting her, even though she just told him, like, I'm married. Like, this is a mistake. I shouldn't have said the things I said. We shouldn't went that far. He's texting her. So she can't understand why this Negro texting her. And so then she goes to work, and like her and Courtney are hanging out or whatever. And they just, chilling or whatever. And it's time for them to cut it short. And they part ways. And then David was in the cut watching her. David was in the cut watching her move. And he goes up to her, and he says, Ellie, before she was about to get into her car. And she turns around, and she sees him, and he was like, she was like, what are you doing here? She was like, yeah, I just came out of the meeting, and I saw you, and I was like, oh, that looks like Ellie. So let me just say hi to you. And so, and mind you, this Negro is in the street. There's cars and everything out there. Okay. While he's stopping to talk to Ellie. And so he was like, I just want you to know about the other night. I'm sorry. I do apologize for that. She was like, no, you don't need to apologize. We've already discussed this. It's okay. And he said, well, can we just meet up for some coffee? Let me just make it up to you. And she was like, just looking like, is this Negro serious? Didn't I just tell him that I was married? Like, he's still asking me. She was like, David, I'm married. This is very inappropriate. I can't. He was like, please, just for coffee. I just want to talk to you. I mean, I want to make it up to you. Can we at least do that? Just coffee. And so the horns are honking. Like, the cars are honking their horns, and they're like, beep, beep, beep. And he was like, wait a minute. He started going off a little bit. Like, something in him like ticked and snapped a little bit. So he was like, wait a minute, can't you see I'm talking? And when she sees him like snap a little bit, she eased on into her car. And this Negro, when she gets into her car, he taps on her window like, Ellie, Ellie. And she rolls down the window. She was like, look, you just look, I'm married. We can't do this. It's inappropriate. I gotta go. And she drives off, and he's standing in the street with the horn still honking, them people mad, and he's standing there looking crazy and deranged. So I was like, oh my gosh. So she goes home, and she's trying to prepare dinner or whatever, and this Negro, okay, he's texting her, just texting her. And she couldn't believe it. She was like, what is wrong with this nigga? Like, I told him that I was married. He kept saying it was good seeing you today. And just so persistent. And she just couldn't believe it. Like, she was starting to get annoyed with it, that she actually, while she was cutting, some vegetables for dinner, she cut herself. And so her husband comes in. He was like, oh, baby, you cut yourself. She was like, yeah. He was like, are you okay? And she was like, no, I'm just a little bit, stressed or whatever, but I'm okay. And so he kisses it or whatever. And then, of course, something happens between, when you're married, you go through all different stages. They started out of nowhere. They started to get their mojo back. They started to get back into their groove. They started flirting. They started being attracted to one another. They started romancing each other, and they started to get back into a good place. I guess he was feeling better, and he was up to being intimate, because it had been a while since they had intimacy. And so they're becoming one again, and they're making love, and they're just enjoying each other, and they're patching things up, and they're back on track. Now, as they're back on track and they're enjoying one another, this Negro, this crazy nut, David, is still texting her. Now, she in the shower with her man, trying to, give her husband some good old loving, and he's texting her. Now, the phone was on the sink counter. So this was when they was in the shower. Luckily, her husband did not see that or whatever. And so then it skips to a scene where David is in a psychiatrist's office. And I was like, oh my gosh, this Negro is crazy. So he's sitting there talking to the psychiatrist. And she was like, well, how are you doing? And he said, I'm actually doing good. She said, well, I was a little worried about you because last time I saw you, you weren't doing too good. He said, I know, but I'm better now. And she said, really? He said, yeah. He said, I'm actually seeing someone. And she was like, oh, you're seeing someone? He was like, yeah, she's a lawyer. And she was like, okay, wow. And he was like, yeah, she's a lawyer, but we're trying to take things slow, because she's in a complicated situation. She just got out of a long-term relationship or whatnot, so we're just trying to take our time. And she was like, well, I know how you felt about Deborah. And I know you was pretty upset about that relationship. And he was like, why you keep bringing that up? She was like, because I know how hard you took that relationship with Deborah. He was like, I already told you that I'm over that. She said, are you really? He was like, yeah, I'm over it. And so every time like someone brings up, well, his psychiatrist brings up Deborah, he kind of like had this look like he really wasn't over it, but he had to try to force himself to be good with the situation and her asking about Deborah. So I knew when he started staring off in space, looking deranged, that this Negro was crazy. I mean, I'm not saying everybody who talks to a psychiatrist is crazy, but this Negro is crazy. For one, he doesn't get the MO with someone telling him, I'm married, leave me alone. He don't get that MO. So I'm like, okay. And then his job description, he's a hacker. So he knows how to hack stuff and get into people's accounts and different things like that. So I'm like, okay, only somebody crazy, deranged would like stuff like that. So anyways, So their daughter Brittany comes home because I think she's on college break, and she comes in the house and she's admiring how beautiful the house is because this is the first time that she saw the new house, and she's loving everything. And it's a good thing she came when she did because her parents just recently just started patching things up and getting their groove back. So I'm glad the daughter didn't come in on them not really on good terms or one. You know what I mean? So she came at a good time and she's just enjoying the little scenery, and she's coming home and the parents are in a good space and place, and they are so happy. They go in and see their daughter, and they're just one happy family. They're just doing so good, and he's still romancing his wife. And then she finally, her law firm is ready, and she's touring the law firm, so she no longer has to, it's a good thing too, because she no longer has to see that nut David at the office. So she finally moves into her new law firm, and she's loving everything. The marriage is good. She's just doing so good. And so she was telling her husband, she was like, remember, Courtney is coming by tonight, and she said she's going to bring someone with her, so that should be fine. And then their daughter Brittany was going on a date or whatnot. So anyways, she's in there trying to, prepare dinner for her company, Courtney, and whoever this guy is that she's going to bring over to the house or whatnot. And of course, as she's cooking, the doorbell rings, and of course she was like, oh, there she goes. So Courtney comes in, and she's so excited to see Courtney, but then her face just immediately went to this face of shock when she saw that her date was David. This nigga, this crazy nut, the one she told to stay away from me, I'm married, we can't do this. This Negro is in her house dating her friend Courtney. When she sees that nigga, she was so livid and so caught off guard and so mortified. She could not believe that this nigga was in the house. And then her husband is, patting him up saying, hey, how you doing? I'm Marcus. And he said, yeah, I'm David. I bought you guys some wine and different things like that. And he tried to pretend like he didn't know Ellie. So he was like, hi, I'm David. And she was like, Ellie. He just played it off so well. I know she wanted to scream. I know I would want to scream if I told this Negro, stay away from me. So anyways, she was like, oh my God, let me pull myself together. Because, your spouse can pick up whatever mood. They know your faces because they've been with you for a long time. And so she's out there trying to put on her game face, and they're just sitting there and just talking. And she was so disgusted with that Negro. She just wanted to slap him. So anyways, I think Ellie's husband, Marcus, asks David how David and Courtney met. And Courtney was like, you want to tell him? And he was like, no, you go ahead and tell him. She was like, all right, well, I was coming out of the elevator and I happened to see this tall, handsome hunk of a man, and we just kind of hit it off. We just started talking and just started dating, and voila, we're here. And of course, Ellie was just looking at him like, this Negro, he don't want her. He just dating her to get close to me. But she had to play it off. And so she was like, well, what happened with your last relationship? And he was like, with my last relationship, it just didn't work out. I realized that after being with a person for 20 years, that it kind of felt like I was dating a stranger. And basically, this nut was regurgitating everything that Ellie had told him at the bar in private. So when he did that, she was so, as anyone would be, she was so pissed off. And she was like, anybody want dessert? And so everybody was like, yeah, of course. And so she was getting up, and she was like, Courtney, you want to help me? And David was like, no, you sit here, Courtney. I'll go help her. I'll do it. She was like, this Courtney is so clueless as to what's going on. She was like, this guy, he's so sweet. So anyways, honey, when they get in the kitchen, she told that nigga, she said, how dare you come to my house? And he was like, well, you wouldn't answer my phone calls or none of that, my texts, none of that. So what do you expect me to do? She said, I told you to stay away from me. You're going to show up at my house and talking to my friend? She said, I don't know what you need to come up with. I don't know, but you need to figure out any type of excuse and go out there and tell them that you have some type of emergency so you can get the heck up out of here. My husband's out there and you have the audacity to come up in my house when my husband is here after I told you that I'm married and you're going to show up here. She said, you better go out there and tell them something. I don't care what the excuse is. You better tell them something and get up out of my house. And don't you ever, I don't want you ever to come to my house around me, my husband, or my daughter. You better go out there and fix it now. And he was just looking at her and he was like, don't you see everything that I went through to do this for you, for us? She was like, us? There is no us. She said, go out there and fix it. He like grabbed her hand. I was like, ooh, this Negro, is he about to do something? Because he snapped. He was like, don't you see everything that I'm trying to do for us? And I was like, okay, yeah, this Negro, he is deranged. For him to date her friend just to be close to her after she done told this nut that she don't want nothing to do with him. Yeah, he's crazy. So he goes out there. He was like, oh, you know, somebody need me, a client of mine. They need me and we need to go. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to cut it short. And of course, Ellie's husband, Marcus, was like, oh man, I'm sorry about that this is cut short, but it's so nice seeing you. And I'm glad. I think we got some new friends here or whatever. Let's link up or whatever. And Ellie is like, oh my gosh, he wants to link up with him. He don't even have a clue as to what's going on. And I thought in that moment, like when they left, that she was going to tell her husband what was going on, but she says nothing. She says absolutely nothing, Nathan. So it skips to her. She's running and she's in tears because she's like, oh gosh, I know I'm in trouble. This Negro is crazy. He came to the house. So she's just out there trying to exercise. That's one of the things that she loves to do, I guess, to clear her head. And then the scenery, you can't beat that. You got the nice beach and all of that good stuff there. And she's running. She's trying to just forget what happened. And this nigga is watching her. But she doesn't know that. So anyway, she goes inside of the house and she sees a package. This nigga then left a package for her. And she saw that. She was like, okay, this is going too far. This Negro's crazy. So what she does, I guess she texts him and tell him to meet her at the spot. And she comes in prancing in that restaurant with her glasses and she means business. She come up in there and he's sitting there and he was about to get up and hug. She said, no, you stay right there. He was like, what's going on? And he was like, you called me to meet you here. She was like, it's not for that. She said, what do I need to do? What do I need to do to keep you away from my family? You sent me a package? And he was like, well, yeah, you know. She was like, listen, I don't know what is wrong with you, but you need to get it through your head. There is no us. There will never be no us. I'm married. I love my husband. I'm happy. You need to stop. This has to end here. This needs to stop. And she kept talking and she had to, because he was like zoning out as she was talking. And she kept talking. She was like, you need to stop. And he said, who you think you're talking to, Deborah? And when he said that, he looked like this crazy, deranged nut sitting there. It's like he just switched. He just switched and transformed real quick. He just banged his fingers and his hands on the dinner table. He was like, who you think you're talking to, Deborah? She was like, David? Who's Deborah? And she was like, David, because he was in this trance. And he finally snapped out of it. And she was like, look, this has to end. That's it. Don't call me. Don't text me. Don't come by my house. Stop. And I mean it. And she gets up and she hands him back the package that he left her, which was a record. And the record is a creepy song, something about how they first met or whatever. I think that was the record or whatever. And she gives it back to him. And honey, when she gives that back to him, he's just sitting there looking crazy. Just this Negro, he's a nut. He's just off. And so he takes the record and he like breaks it in two. I'm like, oh no, like she is in trouble. So once again, after this ordeal, she goes home. She goes downstairs. She sees her husband working on something. I think her husband is an architect person. I don't know. But anyways, he's down there working, and she goes and he said, hey, baby. And she's got tears in her eyes and she hugs him. I thought she was once again going to tell him in that moment what was going on, because it's obvious this nigga's crazy. And so she hugs him and crying or whatever with tears in her eyes. And it just skips to her going to work the next day at her law firm. And there's Courtney. Courtney's outside of the door looking angry, and she pulls up. Ellie pulls up and she gets out and she was like, what's up? And so she goes to her office and Courtney storms back there and she was like, what's up with you? Like, why the angry face? And she was like, oh, David told me everything. And she was like, what are you talking about? Ellie was like, what are you talking about? Oh, you don't know what I'm talking about? David told me ever since you seen him and met up with him, you've been wanting to have an affair with him. And she was like, what? That is not true. That is not true. And she was like, oh, yes, it is true. You couldn't wait to get your hands on him. You want him and you should be ashamed of yourself because you are married. And she was like, Courtney, you just met this dude 30 seconds ago and you believe him over me? I'm your friend. You know me and you know I would never do that. And she said, oh, really? Well, what about these text messages? And she looks at the text messages and she was like, wait, no, I did not do that. I did not do that. You got to believe me. You know me better than this, that I wouldn't send you any text like that. And she was like, think about it. Like, the dude you're seeing, you don't even know him. You know me. And she was like, think about it. David is a hacker. He sent these to you and trying to make it appear that I sent them. He sent that to you. She was like, whatever, you are pathetic. And I can't believe you. And so she storms out. Courtney storms out. And of course, Ellie is chasing behind her. Now that pissed me off, because how is it that you know this girl your whole life, but you let this man come in 30 seconds and you believe everything he's telling you over your friend? See, this is the stuff I don't like. I would have snatched her back into some good sense, because that don't make no sense. How you gonna hop over a piece of, I'm not even gonna say that word, but you know what I mean, over a man? Really, Courtney? Okay. So she storms off and she was like, man, this dude really got a hold on her. And so she was like, when he did that, she wanted to do a little bit more research to find out who this guy really is, like a little bit about his background or whatever. So she goes to, I think his old place of work or whatever. And she goes in there and of course she goes to talk to someone that she was looking for. And she was like, oh, hey, how are you doing? What brings you here? And she was like, yeah, actually, I wanted to ask you some questions about David. And she was like, oh, okay. And she was like, yeah, I'm actually asking for a colleague, just for, I think she said, a background check. And I just wanted to ask you some personal questions. Maybe you could tell me a little bit about him. And she was like, well, I mean, for starters, I saw how he was looking at you. He's crazy about you. And she was like, Ellie was like, what? She was like, yeah, you didn't notice how he always would look at you? I think he had a crush on you. And she was like, oh, I didn't know that. She said, a matter of fact, you look a lot like Deborah, his ex-wife. And she was like, really? And she was like, yeah. And she was like, she said, have you met Deborah? or something like that. Have you ever met her or something like that? She was like, no, I never met her. She was like, but I would like to talk to her. And she was like, the lady was like, oh, you haven't heard? She was like, what? She was like, Deborah's dead. And she was like, oh my gosh, really? What happened? The lady was like, well, apparently the guy she was seeing wasn't any good, because I mean, they got robbed or whatever and murdered. Apparently her boyfriend owed someone some money or something like that. And she was like, did they ever think David was a suspect? And she was like, no, they did several interviews with him and talked to him several times. And after talking with him, he was no longer a suspect. They didn't suspect him to kill his wife. And she was like, interesting. So she's trying to call Courtney. She's on the phone trying to call a friend to tell her friend about this nut. She keeps calling her. Of course, Courtney is not answering because she's thinking that, Ellie really wants David, which she doesn't. She's just trying to warn her friend. She was like, come on, please call me back. I need to talk to you about, well, she didn't say at that moment about David, but she said it's important. So anyways, she tries to do some more research on the computer, and she just discovers a lot of things about this nut, especially with her searching into what happened as far as with his ex-wife Deborah and her murder, and just to see if everything lined up and if everything tied together with the story, because something was not adding up to her. And so when she found the story or whatever, she decides that she wanted to email this information to her friend Courtney. Since Courtney wasn't answering her phone calls and different things like that, she decided to send her an email with the information on David's ex-wife Deborah. Now, I didn't even know that this Negro, I thought it was just a divorce and Deborah moved on, but I didn't know Deborah was dead, that she was deceased, and he failed to leave that. He left that part out. He failed to tell that part when they were talking or whatever. And I forgot to mention, the first night that David and Ellie went out to the bar, he told her that he had a confession that he needed to make, and that he knew all along that Ellie, was working at the law firm where he went to go do work. So that should tell you right there, he was plotting on her all along. He figured like, okay, my ex-wife is dead, which this Negro, obviously, as you can tell, he got some deranged traits, like killer traits. So obviously he killed his wife. Once he killed her, he decided, okay, I'm gonna set my eyes on Ellie, and maybe me and Ellie can work out. I know it's been 20 years, but I'm gonna go back and try to date her and be with her. This nigga is crazy. So later that night, this nut is at her home once again, because he's a hacker. He goes to inside her house, looking all around her house, just trying to study the ins and out of her house, looking all through things. And he goes into the bedroom where Ellie and Marcus are asleep. He goes in there, staring at her, rubbing her face. And I'm shocked she didn't wake up, because, anybody, well, unless you're a deep sleeper, but I'm a pretty light sleeper, I'm going to feel all that. But she didn't feel none of this. She didn't hear this nigga. Well, he knows how to get around security measures and all of that. So that's why he was able to get in the house nicely and snug. And she didn't hear that. She didn't feel him touching her face and staring at her. And so as he's staring at her, Ellie and Marcus' daughter come home, I guess from her night out or whatever. And of course, this dummy, David, he hears it. So he has to get up and go downstairs to the kitchen area to go hide. And so the daughter goes into the kitchen, just minding her little business. La, 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 la. I'm going to give me a little late night snack. Got her little popcorn, put it in the microwave. And then she hears a little creak. And she was like, wait a minute, I know I'm not tripping. I heard something. So she goes around the corner, and she's going around the corner, and David picks up a knife because he's like, okay, she coming around here. She gonna see me. I'm gonna have to stab this girl. And I'm like, oh no, please don't go no further. Like, please don't let her get stabbed because this nigga's crazy. He's crazy. He gonna stab her. And so luckily the microwave went off for the popcorn. It said ding. I was like, oh my God, thank you Jesus, because he was about to stab that girl. So she goes over there to get her popcorn, and he sneaks on out the house. So anyways, Ellie of course is still trying to call Courtney. Courtney is not answering. So she's having dinner with her husband and her daughter, whatever, and she received these messages. Of course, it's from that nut. It's an unknown number because she blocked that Negro a long time ago. But he texts her from an unknown number talking about, would you like a little show or something like that. And then he sent her a video of Courtney and him hanging out. And of course, she's looking at it like, oh my gosh, my friend. I'm worried about my friend. And she drops the phone, and her husband, Marcus, and her daughter, Brittany, was like, are you okay? And she was like, yeah, it's just a message related to work or whatever. And she drops her phone, and her daughter was trying to pick it up. She was like, no, I got it. I need to make a quick phone call. So she excuses herself. And so she is trying to call Courtney to warn her, like, girl, this Negro is a nut. You're out with a nut. Like, call me. David is dangerous. He's dangerous, And so, of course, she don't answer or whatnot. But, when this nut went into Ellie's house, this nut went into her drawer where her lingerie is, right? Pulls out her lingerie and sniffs her lingerie and takes her lingerie. Now, the kicker is when she tries to send, when Ellie tries to keep calling her friend, because mind you, I told you that she sent an email to Courtney. And so after their night out, David and Courtney's night out at the club or whatnot, they go home, of course. And when she's there, she's trying to open up an email. And she's on her computer, and she's checking her email, and she does see the caption, David is not who you think he is. But she just shook her head. She didn't even open to see what was in there, the details of the email. She just saw that caption. And so this nut David comes up behind her, and he shuts her computer and puts a gift bag next to it and kisses her. And she's so oblivious as to what's going on. And so she kisses him and whatever. And she was like, oh, you got something for me? And he was like, yeah. And so she reaches in there and pulls out some black lingerie. Now, I told you this is the kicker. Do you know that this nut took Ellie's lingerie and brought it to Courtney? Now, if that ain't off, I don't know what is. You done stole Ellie's lingerie to give it to Courtney so Courtney can put it on. And of course, Courtney don't know. She just thought, oh, you just bought me some nice little lingerie. And I don't think they had sex at this point, but tonight they finna have sex. So she puts it on or whatever. She comes out saying, you like it? Of course, in his mind, he's thinking about Ellie. So he grabs her and take her and start making love to her. And he's being very aggressive, doing some he's just on a aggressive type of vibe, because I think he's thinking about Ellie and all the stuff that he wanted to do with Ellie. And that's just nasty. Like, she's wearing her friend's lingerie and don't even know it. That is just freaking nasty. Of course, it had to have been clean, because, I mean, obviously you can smell when lingerie ain't right, like something ain't right. So it was clean. At least he had sense enough to clean it before he had her, put it on, whatever. But that's just, that's so nasty, wearing your friend's lingerie. And so, um, they screwing all night. He leaves out the next morning. And, she was like, call me, call me. I had a great time. Call me. He said, I promise you I will. But anyways, I'm sorry. Yeah, Ellie is sitting in the cut watching them. She was like, oh no, they didn't slept together. But she's watching them because she wants to follow David. So, anyways, David gets in his car, and she's following this Negro, right? Just following him, trying to see where he's going or whatever. He pulls up, and he have like some little golf clubs on his shoulder or whatever. So he's going into a golf club place or whatnot. And so Ellie goes follow him. She sneaks up behind him, and she goes in, and she's making sure she's not being seen or whatever. And she's trying to see who David's finna meet when he goes to play his little golf. And she looks out the window, and she is devastated when this nigga is meeting up with her husband, Marcus. I was like, oh my God, this nigga is crazy. He is meeting up with Ellie's husband, Marcus. And they're at the golf course, and they're just talking or whatever. And poor little Marcus, he don't even know what's going on. Like, oh my gosh. So they're playing golf or whatever, and David started asking Marcus, man, she's such a beautiful woman. I would love to have a beautiful woman like that. You're really blessed. He said, yeah, we are now. I mean, we were in a rough space, for a while, but we kind of found our happy place. And, he was like, did y'all go to counseling or something like that? He said, we did, but it wasn't for, I don't know what he said. If y'all hear anything in the background, that's my husband. Don't mind him. But he was like, I think they did go to counseling or something like that. And he was like, but we're doing good now. We're in love. We're happy. You just got to make things work after you've been together for a while. You go through ups and downs and different things like that. But you can make it work. And he was like, he started getting deranged because he was thinking about Ellie, because in his mind, that's his woman, and he's going to claim her. He's going to get her, whatnot. And so he was like, man, I know the feeling of being in love with a woman and knowing that she's in the arms of another man, kissing another man, hugging another man. And as he's saying this, he got this freaking golf club in his hand, walking towards Marcus. And I was like, oh my God, he getting ready to hit him over the head with this golf club, because nobody was really out there. It was just them two. And he's saying all these words, yeah, kissing another man and hugging another man and sleeping with another man, especially you seeing that with, from a woman that you really, really love. And then I was like, oh my God, he about to hit him upside the head, and he doesn't. I was like, thank God. He puts the golf club back in the little thing, the package or whatever, the little bag it goes into. And dude was like, yeah, that can be pretty hurtful, but you're dating someone new now. You're dating Courtney, and I hope everything works out. And he said, I'm really sorry about your ex. And he was like, no problems, no sweat. So anyways, as they were doing that, Ellie decides that she wanted to go inside of David's apartment. So because she was basically following him around, so she found out where he lived or whatever. So she goes in there, and she talks to the front desk receptionist or whatever. She was like, I really would like to go up to David's room because I forgot something up there. And the girl was like, I know how that is, I know how that can be when you have an all-nighter. So she gave her the key up to his apartment. So she goes into his apartment, and she's looking all around. I guess she wanted to see if she can find any evidence laying around, clues as to if he killed his ex-wife or whatever, just anything she could find. So she's snooping around his house, and she locates his computer. and she takes his computer, and she didn't know the password, but she just said, this nigga's crazy. It's probably my name. She puts her name in there. Voila, it opens up. And of course, he has a lot of photos. She's looking on the computer with a lot of photos that he took of his ex-wife, Deborah, and his ex-wife Lover, and then he had a lot of pictures of her. So he was following her around. She discovered that because she didn't know that he was following her around, but he had pictures of her on the beach with her husband, just intimate pictures or whatever. And so then he comes home, because she was in the kitchen looking at this, and she had to like hide behind the island in the kitchen. He comes home. He's, taking his stuff out of the bag. I don't know. I guess he went grocery shopping. And so he stops. And, crazy people know when something is off. Like deranged people can tell when something is a little off in their apartment. So he was like, something is a little off. So he walks around, and Ellie is like literally right there, and he is above her. And she was like, oh my God, she started crying, like, he's going to see me, he's going to hurt me. So thank God, like when he was right there by her, he was about to look, but his phone it started ringing, and it was Courtney. And she was like, hey baby, what are you doing? I want you to come meet me. Come over to my house right now. I think she said she wanted to have lunch or something with him. He said, okay, no sweat. I'll be right there. And so luckily he drops what he's doing and he leaves. And so she's able to leave out of the place without, being found out that she was there. And so, she after she leaves the apartment, she calls Courtney again. And this time Courtney picks up, and she was like, Courtney, and she was like, Courtney said to Ellie, you got 5 seconds. And so Ellie was like, look, I know you're mad at me, and I know you think that I want David, but David is not the person that you think he is. And she was like, what are you talking about? And she was like, look, David is a very dangerous man. And I know this for a fact because I went into his apartment and I found all types of pictures and all types of evidence on his computer. He is not a good man. He's very dangerous. He's a stalker. He's a hacker. He's dangerous. You need to be very, very careful. Just listen to me or whatever. And she was like, I gotta go. And then David comes in, and Courtney, even though she was trying to act like she wasn't listening to Ellie, she started listening because she said, I think before Ellie and Courtney hung up, Ellie said, trust me, you need to listen to me. It's probably stuff on his phone. Check his phone. And so when David comes in, he was like, oh, who was you talking to? It looked like you was talking, it was something intense. You were talking about something intense. And she was like, oh no, I wasn't talking to anybody important. It was just, somebody trying to sell something. And he was like, wow, yeah, that's something, because I could tell it was a kind of an intense, deep conversation. She was like, well, some people just don't know what no means. No means no, and some people don't get that MO. He was like, tell me about it. And so he walked off into the back. I think he went to the bathroom or whatever. And she picks up his phone, and she was able to get into his phone, and she sees everything that, well, not everything that Ellie was telling her, but she does see pictures of Ellie in his phone that were recent and everything like that. And she was like, oh my gosh, Ellie was not lying. Like, oh my gosh. And so David comes in and catches her on his phone, and she was like, what are you doing with the stuff on your phone? And he was like, oh, that was nothing. Somebody told me to look out for Ellie or something. She was like, no, these are recent. Like, have you been stalking her? Have you been following her? And so at that point, he knew that pretty much he was in trouble. So he grabs her and hit her in the head. But Ellie was making her way over there to her friend Courtney, because she knew that David was going over there to her house. So she's driving to her house because she knows that something may go down. And just like her gut instinct, when she went to her friend's house, she was like, Courtney. She's looking around her house and she sees Courtney on the floor. She was like, oh my gosh. But, she just had like a little cut on her head. He wasn't able to do what he probably really wanted to do. He wasn't able to do that because Ellie came in. So, of course, she calls the cops or whatever. And the detectives and stuff come and they said, well, your friend is going to be okay. We tried to go to David's house because she told them pretty much she knows who it is who did that. And so they tried to go to his house. He wasn't there and everything like that. But they say your friend is going to make a full recovery. And she was like, thank God. So Ellie's husband, Marcus, of course, he comes and he was like, what's going on, honey? And at this point, she knew that she couldn't hide anything else from her husband. She knew that she had to tell him. So when they get home, she told him. She said, she told him everything that was going on. And of course, her husband, Marcus, was so mad. He was like, so I'm up here having drinks with this dude in my house. We playing golf. We talking. We like buddy. And you just going to sleep up and slip on his dick and you're sleeping with him. She was like, no, I did not sleep with him. We were just friends 20 years ago. I was drunk. I was drinking and we had a kiss. That's it. We didn't sleep together. None of that. And he was like, I can't believe you. Like, are you not happy? She was like, yes, I'm happy. I love my life. I love you. I love our daughter. I just had a moment. I just had a moment. And he said, well, if you weren't happy, why didn't you talk to me about it? Why didn't you tell me? And she said, I did try to tell you. I just didn't know how. And I love Marcus. I love Ellie's husband. He is such a good husband. Like, he was trying to listen to her. He didn't hit her. He didn't beat her. He didn't demean her. He didn't insult her. He didn't call her out her name. Of course, as anyone would be, they would be angry. I think he was angry, but the reason why he wasn't so angry is because they didn't actually sleep together. But even, I believe, Marcus, even if he would have found out that they slept together, I don't think that he would have insulted her or disrespected her. I so loved her husband, Marcus. So he was so very mature about it. And he was trying to talk to her and reason with her and ask questions as to what happened and why did she do that and was she happy? Where did they go wrong? And then, of course, their daughter comes in and they sit her down. And I think they told her, I don't think he told her the part that his wife cheated. I think he just pretty much let her know what was going on and stuff like that because, they just needed to explain that to their daughter, what was going on, because they know that they got a nut on their hands. And so they need to let their daughter know what's happening. So they sit down and talk to her or whatever. And then the detective comes over to the house, to Ellie and Marcus's house, and they give them updates. And they say, well, we was able to go to his house and we found a few leads, but we didn't have to go that far because David confessed to killing his ex-wife, Deborah. He confessed to everything, just told everything. And they was like, wow, he did? So the detective was like, yeah, so you guys are pretty much okay. You guys can relax. He confessed to everything. And he's pretty much going to be locked up and locked away. You don't have to worry about him or whatever. And so they're thinking like, yes, we got everything back to life. Wow, this is good. This is great. And so, of course, that night they decide to be intimate. And this crazy nut is out there looking at them be intimate. Just making love, just looking at them being intimate. He just crazy. And so with David telling everything that he did as far as killing his ex-wife and all of that, I knew that this nigga had a plan. Like, he wanted them to relax. He wanted them to be with their guards down and not on alert because he had plans. So sure enough, that night when he went to go spy on them, there was a homeless guy out there by Ellie and Marcus's house, and he took some gasoline and a lighter and burned him up. So it will appear as if he was dead. That's why he confessed to everything, because he knew what he was going to do. He burned the body up, and I guess they thought that that was him, that he committed suicide and that he was dead. Which, how do you get away with that? I mean, I know a body can be burnt, but there is always some type of evidence left where you could tell whether or not that this is the person. Like, their teeth can get burned up, so they can do the dental identification. But anyways, it's a movie. So they're thinking that he's dead, and he's really not. This nut is still alive. He just had a little alibi. He had a little plan. So, so they're just living their life, and they're just happy-go-lucky. And then she receives a text from Linda, which is one of her secretaries that works at her law firm. She receives a text from Linda saying that she needed to come to the office. And her husband, it was kind of late. And her husband was like, really? Like, I don't know about you going this late. And she was like, no, it'll be okay. It'll be really quick. I need to go by the office to get something. She goes to the office, and, you know, it's dark and everything in there. And she was like, Linda. She was looking around for Linda, and she trips on a shoe. And when she trips on the shoe, she falls, and there is Linda. It looked like she was dead. Okay? She's dead in the office. So she runs out. She goes to her car, and she receives a text message from an unknown number talking about, you might want to get home to your husband. What is your husband and your daughter doing? And so she freaks out. She calls the detective, and she said that, hey, David is not dead. He's not dead. I know you guys thought he committed suicide, but he's not dead. And the detective was like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? She was like, trust me on this. Get some police over to my house right now. He's not dead. He's at my house. And she hang up. She goes to her house. And sure enough, she's going through there, and she's looking, and she sees her daughter Brittany's boyfriend cut up, messed up. I don't know what happened to him. It looked like he was hurt. I don't know if he was dead, but it looked like he possibly could have been dead. He was out there. Then she turns around, and then this psychopath is standing there saying and playing that song, that, you know, the record she gave back to him at the restaurant. He's playing that record, and he's dancing around like a nut. And she was like, I just cannot believe that. He said, you know, we can work this out. Me and you, we could be together. I lost you 20 years ago. I can't lose you again. We are made for each other. We belong together. We fit. And she was like, there's no us. Why don't you understand? And so she runs out of the house, because he grabs her, of course. And she's going out there, and she sees, I think she hits him, and she's able to get away. And she sees her husband and her daughter tied the heck up, and she was like, oh my gosh. And she unties them, and they're running or whatever, and they see the police lights because the police are coming, and they run out there, and they was like, help. And the police officer in the daggum car is dead, because this nigga David then hurt him. And so Ellie sees that he's dead, and she says to Marcus, you just take Brittany to the car and help her get off, and I'm going to call for help. So she goes into the sheriff's car, and she's trying to get some help on the little, what is that, the intercom or whatever. She was like, help, anyone there? And then she turns on the light. This nigga standing in front of the freaking cop car. And then she's still trying to get help, and she sees him. He comes around, and he grabs her. And then, of course, she screams. Then her husband is over there with the daughter, trying to tell the daughter to go on to safety. And so he was like, go, Brittany, I gotta help your mama. So he runs over there, and he tries to fight off David or whatever. They start tussling or whatnot. And the hero really is Ellie, because Ellie keep whooping this nut's tail. Like, because the husband, like I told you, he had like a little shoulder injury. So he was doing a little something, but not as much as Ellie was doing. She picked up a stick and hit him across the head or whatever, and they started running off or whatnot. And then They started fighting. They started fighting. Another fight ensues, and they're running, and they run towards the beach. And her husband falls. But she tries to keep running. She called her husband named Marcus, but then it was that nut David. Luckily, he wasn't even worried about Marcus. He was just so fixated on Ellie. And so she puts her hands up, and he was like, I'm not, because he had a gun in his hand. He said, I'm not going to hurt you. I'm not going to hurt you. It's you and me. It could be us. We could be together forever. I love you. Don't you see all that I'm doing for you? And she was like, please, just please stop this. You got to stop this. Please, just stop this. And so anyways, as he's going closer to her, her husband come and he fights him again. And of course, David beats up Marcus because Marcus' arm is jacked up. He beats him up. The gun falls or something like that. Or the knife he had falls or something like that. Anyways, a fight ensues. And they're tussling and they're tussling. And mind you, they're close to this edge. And as they're fighting, somehow, some way, David slips and he's over the edge. And Ellie is trying to grab his hand to pull him back up. And as she's trying to pull him back up, her husband was like, oh, no, I don't think so. So he grabs his wife's body to hold on to her. So this nigga don't try to pull her down with him. And Ellie is trying to hold on. She was like, don't let go. Hold on. I got you. I got you. And so David's looking like the nut he is. And then he just falls. He just falls down. And Ellie was like, no. And of course, her husband grabs her and she's just crying in his arms or whatever. And this nigga falls all the way down on the ground. And he's laying there looking like a limp rag doll. Just basically just he looks deformed and disabled at this point. He's dead because that's a long fall. So anyways, they're crying or whatever. And then like 2 months later, the daughter, I guess she goes back to college and they said, well, honey, we enjoyed your stay, even though it was a bit traumatic, but call us when you get to back to where back to school, whatnot. And so they're sending her off, and then it shows them in each other's arms, and they're just so happy and in love and together, and they made it through that storm. And of course, as they're walking back into the house, because in the beginning of the film it said sold, and the end, of course, with all this dramatic stuff that has happened and that is surrounding that house, it says for sale because they're leaving. This Negro lost his life pretty much on their property, so they just have to find another home. And that is the end of Fatal Affair. It definitely was fatal for David. David was so super crazy. It's actually people out there that are psychopaths like him. But I hope you guys enjoyed this film. Let's keep the conversation rolling in the comments section. Let me know if you've seen it, and if you loved it or hate it, just let me know, and let's just keep talking about this. God bless you guys. Bye bye.